scientists will be able to engage in their work. They will be maintained. The laboratories will be maintained. And therefore, I think that we are faced with a different situation than the one that I responded to earlier in the year.
Mr. President, do you plan to address the UN General Assembly session later this month, and will you meet with Mr. Gromyko there or here?
Well, I plan to address the United Nations General Assembly later this month. The meeting with the foreign minister, and I'm going to meet with other foreign ministers when they come, I assume will be in Washington. I think that, and in some ways, I think the Vietnamese people and ourselves agree. We want the war to be won, the communists to be contained, and the Americans to go home. That is our policy. I'm sure it's the policy of the people of Vietnam. But we are not there to see a war lost. And we will follow the policy, which I've indicated today, of advancing those causes and issues which help win the war. Even if he could, and I strongly doubt that he could, by stretching law to the furthest, seek in any way to break the bond and the understanding which exists between the Senate and the executive, and in a very deep sense, the American people. This issue. Yes, Mr. Arnold.
Two books have been written about you recently. One of them by Hugh Sidey has been criticized as being too uncritical of you, and the other by Victor Lasky as being too critical of you. How would you review them if you've read them?
I thought Mr. Sidey was critical, but I haven't read all of Mr. Lasky, except I've just gotten the flavor of it. I've seen it's highly praised by Mr. Drummond and Mr. Kroc and others, so I'm looking forward to reading it, because the part that I read was not as brilliant as I gather the rest of it is from what they say about it.
As a parent, do you think it is right to wrench children away from their neighborhood, family area, and cart them off to strange, faraway schools to force racial balance? I noticed you said that you did not approve of racial...
I think that aside from the general statements which have been made, I would think that that sort of a matter really should be discussed by the Ambassador Lodge and others. I don't see that we serve any useful purpose engaging in that kind of discussion at this time.
President, Governor Rockefeller says that he may have to withdraw his pledge not to raise taxes in New York State.
It seems to play both of them.
I can tell you that there's nothing that has occupied our attention more over the last 9 months. The fact, of course, is we want to sustain India, which may be attacked this fall by China. So we don't want India to be helpless as a 500 million people. And, of course, if that government country became fragmented and defeated, of course, that would be a most destructive blow to the balance of power. On the other hand, everything we give to India adversely affects the balance of power with Pakistan, which is a much smaller country. So we're dealing with a very, very complicated problem because the hostility between them is so deep. George Ball's trip was an attempt to lessen that. I think we're going to deal with a very unsatisfactory situation in that area. My judgment is that finally Pakistan would not make an alliance with China. I think she'll continue to make it very clear to us her concern about the rearmament of India and her strong conviction that she must not be put at a military disadvantage in relationship to India. But that would be much different, I think, than a formal alliance, because that would change completely, of course, the CETO relationship and all the rest. So we're trying to balance off what is one of our more difficult problems. This is true, of course, in other areas, but in the Middle East, but I would say it's most complicated right now. In India, we had hoped that a settlement of the Kashmire Dispute would bring about a improvement in the relations between the countries. But Kashmir is further from being settled today than it was 6 months ago. So I think we're just going to have to continue to work with this one. Thank you.
From the